"This is our booth, sweetheart. Time to move." The words didn't come as a request. They landed like a claim. Heavy, practiced, confident the room would obey. For a brief moment, Marston's bar and grill forgot how to breathe. Forks froze mid-air. A laugh died halfway out of a throat. The jukebox hummed on, stubborn and unaware, while everything else tightened into a silence thick enough to feel. The three men standing at the center booth looked out of place in a small-town bar filled with denim and work boots. Sharp suits, polished watches, smiles that never reached their eyes. They stood with the ease of men who had never been told no. In the booth sat a woman who looked like she'd chosen the seat for simple reasons. Light, space, focus. Claire Donovan, early 30s, dark hair pulled neatly back, a laptop open beside an untouched lid. Calm in her posture, but not careless. The kind of calm that came from knowing how to hold ground without raising a voice. She looked up slowly. "I've been here almost an hour," she said. There were no signs. "I'm not moving." The tallest man, Gavin Rourke, leaned forward and placed his hand flat on the table. Not hard, just enough. "See," he said gently, "that's the wrong answer." His companions laughed on cue. One of them slid Claire's laptop shut with a deliberate click. Another lifted her water glass, took a sip, and set it down like it now belonged to him. Around them, the room stayed quiet. A couple at the bar whispered and looked away. The bartender paused mid-polish, then continued. Everyone knew Gavin Rourke, not because he was loud, but because he was connected. Claire's fingers hovered near her laptop, caught between instinct and calculation. "Give it back," she said, sharper now. "Don't be rude," one of the men replied lightly. "We're just having fun." Fun. The word hung in the air like a lie. Gavin leaned closer. "This town has rules," he said. "You don't know them yet." Claire glanced around, not searching for rescue, just confirmation she wasn't alone. She mostly found silence. And then, a soft sound from the corner, a glass being set down. It wasn't loud, but it carried. In the far corner sat a man no one had been watching. Faded jeans, gray t-shirt, ball cap pulled low, a half-eaten burger cooling in front of him. Iced tea leaving rings on the wood. Ethan Cole, a man who came in, ate quietly, paid, and left. Easy to miss, easier to underestimate. But his eyes were locked on the booth now, steady, measuring. Ethan had seen moments like this before, on job sites where men swallowed insults to keep paychecks, in locker rooms where silence fed bullies, on school grounds where his 12-year-old daughter once stood small while laughter circled her. He knew the sound of dignity being stripped away, and he knew what it cost to let it happen. Slowly, deliberately, Ethan pushed his chair back. The legs scraped the floor. The first sound of resistance that night. Heads turned. Gavin noticed. Ethan crossed the room without hurry. Not aggressive, not hesitant. Just certain. Claire's breath caught when she saw him approaching. Not relief, but fear for him. Because in towns like this, standing up didn't just cost bruises. It cost jobs, homes, quiet lives. "You lost, pal," Gavin said with a smile. "This booth's taken." Ethan stopped beside the table. "She's not in your way," he said calmly. "Leave her alone." A ripple moved through the room. Gavin laughed, glancing at his friends. "Buddy, you don't get it. This is our booth." One of the men leaned back. "Why don't you grab another corner, construction man?" "Your place. Know it." Ethan didn't rise to it. He didn't insult them. He simply stood there. "Looks like she's not laughing," he said. The laughter that followed was sharper now. Gavin's smile thinned. He stepped closer, invading Ethan's space. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Ethan didn't blink. "Doesn't matter." The room held its breath. Ice cracked in glasses. Neon hummed. "I'm giving you one chance," Gavin said. "Walk away." "No," Ethan replied. Not loud. Final. Gavin shoved him, hard enough to stagger most men. The shove should have sent Ethan Cole backward. That was what Gavin Rourke expected. A stumble, a curse under breath, a retreat toward the corner where men like Ethan were meant to stay. But Ethan didn't move. Not his feet, not his shoulders, not even his eyes. It was as if the force had struck something rooted, an old post sunk deep into ground that had learned the shape of storms. A gasp swept the room. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Gavin's face. It lasted only a second, but the room saw it. Ethan looked down at the hand that had shoved him, then back at Gavin. "You don't want to do this," he said. The words weren't a threat. They were information. Gavin's lips curled. You think you're brave? He asked lightly. You think this ends well for you? Ethan didn't answer. Silence, chosen carefully, did the work for him. Behind him, Claire stood rigid, her fingers curled tight around her briefcase strap. She wanted to speak. Ethan could feel it, but fear pressed her words flat before they reached her mouth. Gavin noticed and smiled, mistaking restraint for surrender. See, he said, half turning toward her, you get it. Some people understand their place. The word place landed heavy. This wasn't about a booth anymore. It was about power. Who had it, who didn't, and who was expected to shrink quietly so others could feel tall. Ethan felt the familiar heat rise in his chest, not rage, recognition. He'd felt it on job sites when supervisors barked orders from clean offices, in meetings where decisions were made by men who'd never lifted what they signed off on, in school hallways where his daughter learned how loud silence could be. Gavin stepped closer again, lowering his voice. I'm giving you one last chance, he said. Walk away. Finish your burger. Go home. No, Ethan said again. This time the word carried weight. Gavin's patience snapped. He reached for Ethan's collar. Claire's voice finally cracked through the air. Stop! Too late. Ethan moved, fast, but controlled. His hand came up smoothly, catching Gavin's wrist before the grip could tighten. The motion was clean and precise, like catching a falling glass before it shattered. He didn't twist, didn't jerk, didn't squeeze. He simply stopped the motion, absolute control without cruelty. The room froze. Gavin tried to pull free. He couldn't. Years of lifting steel and steady labor lived in Ethan's grip now. Trent half stood from the booth, then sat back down. Wyatt's grin vanished, replaced by uncertainty. They had never learned what to do when intimidation failed. Ethan leaned in just enough for Gavin to hear him. This ends now, he said quietly. He released Gavin and stepped back. No shove, no show. Gavin straightened, scanning the room for support. He didn't find it. Claire slid her laptop free and stood. You don't own this place, she said. You never did. The bartender finally spoke. Gavin, Hank Miller said, stepping out from behind the bar, voice steady and carrying farther than expected. Leave. Silence. Then murmurs of agreement. People nodded, quietly, firmly. The room, for the first time, chose together. Gavin's confidence collapsed inward. Without another word, he turned and stormed out, his men trailing behind. The door slammed. Marston's exhaled. Claire looked at Ethan, shaken. Thank you. Ethan shook his head. Someone had to. He paid his tab and turned to leave. Wait, Claire called. What's your name? He paused. Ethan Cole. I'm Claire. They held each other's gaze for a beat, long enough to know that this wasn't over. Outside, the night air hit Ethan's face. He didn't feel victorious. He felt alert, because men like Gavin Rourke didn't forget. They planned. And as Ethan drove home to a small house where a 12-year-old girl waited, he understood something clearly. Standing up tonight wasn't the end. It was the beginning, and beginnings always demand a price. The house was quiet when Ethan Cole got home, not asleep, just waiting. The porch light cast a narrow rectangle across the living room floor, shoes by the door, a jacket slung over a chair, the faint smell of tomato sauce lingering in the air. Mia's sneakers were still there. That loosened something in Ethan's chest he hadn't realized was tight. He set his keys down carefully and moved toward the kitchen. Mia sat at the table with her homework spread out, pencil tucked behind one ear, hair falling loose around her face. She looked up the moment she heard him. You're late, she said. Not accusation, observation. Yeah, Ethan replied. Sorry. She studied him longer than usual. You're not tired, she said. Then, after a pause, not work tired. Ethan stopped. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her. The overhead light hummed softly. Something happened, he said. Mia didn't rush him. She'd learned patience early. At the bar, Ethan continued, some men were bothering a woman. Mia frowned. Did they know her? No. Then why were they doing it? Ethan considered the question. Because they could, he said. Mia's pencil stopped moving. Did you help her? Yes. Her shoulders lifted slightly, then settled. Was it scary? She asked. Ethan thought of Gavin Rourke's smile, the shove, the way the room had gone silent like it was holding its breath. Yes, he said honestly. Mia nodded once, then looked down at her notebook, shading a small square until the paper thinned. Did anyone else help? She asked. Ethan shook his head. Not at first. That's not fair, she said quietly. No, Ethan agreed. It isn't. She was quiet for a moment, then said, When those boys were picking on me last year, nobody helped either. Not until you came. The words hit harder than Ethan expected. He reached across the table, resting his hand over hers. I'm glad you told me, he said. I thought if I stayed quiet it would stop, Mia said. I didn't want you to get in trouble. Ethan swallowed. Sometimes staying quiet makes it easier for them, he said. But that doesn't mean it was your fault. Mia looked up. So, standing up is always the right thing? Ethan didn't answer quickly. No, he said carefully, but choosing not to stand up always costs something too. Mia nodded, absorbing it. Did the woman say thank you? She asked. Yes. Did you want her to? Ethan smiled faintly. Not really. Mia returned to her homework, the conversation settling into the room without leaving. But Ethan felt it stay. The call came the next morning. Ethan was already at the site, hard hat under his arm, boots dusted white with concrete. Steel beams rose against the pale sky. His phone buzzed. Ethan Cole, a clipped voice said. This is site management. Ethan's jaw tightened. Morning. There's been a concern, the voice continued. Your contract is being suspended, effective immediately. Ethan closed his eyes. Why? He asked. Conduct, the voice replied. Off-site behavior reflecting poorly on the company. It wasn't an accusation. It was a decision. How long? Ethan asked. Indefinite. The call ended. The site kept working. Ethan stood still, phone in hand, understanding exactly how fast standing up could follow him home. The letter arrived that afternoon, neatly taped to the front door. A rent adjustment. 30%, effective next month. Ethan sat at the table holding the paper, while Mia hovered in the doorway. Is something wrong? She asked. Ethan folded the letter carefully. We'll figure it out. She didn't look convinced. That night, there was a knock at the door. Claire Donovan stood on the porch, coat buttoned, eyes apologetic but steady. I heard, she said. Ethan leaned against the frame. That was quick. Gavin doesn't waste time, Claire replied. You should leave town, Ethan said, for your own sake. Claire shook her head. I can't. She held up a slim folder. I didn't come here by accident. Inside, she laid out documents, property records, permits delayed, projects promised and never built. He uses silence, Claire said, not force. He makes people disappear quietly. Ethan folded his arms. I can't fight him. I'm not asking you to, Claire said. I'm asking you not to disappear. From the hallway, Mia watched, listening without pretending she wasn't. What happens if he wins? Mia asked. Claire met her eyes gently. Then he keeps winning. Silence settled. Ethan looked at his daughter, at the letter, at the folder. I need time, he said. Claire nodded. I'll be here. She turned to leave, then paused. Standing up last night mattered, she added. More than you know. After she left, Ethan stood alone in the kitchen. The house felt smaller, not because of fear, because of the choice pressing in. Later that night, as Mia slept, Ethan stared at the crack above his bed. It no longer looked like a river. It looked like a fault line. And once a fault line shifted, nothing ever returned to exactly the way it was before. The test did not arrive with a threat. It arrived with paperwork. Ethan woke to the sound of a truck idling outside the house. Too early, too still. He stood at the hallway window and watched it linger before rolling away without purpose. Nothing happened. That was the point. By the time he poured his first cup of coffee, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Inspection scheduled for your property. Noon. No greeting, no signature. Ethan stared at the screen until it went dark. He didn't tell Mia. She was already rushing through the kitchen, backpack half-zipped, toast clenched between her teeth. Bus, she said. Love you, Ethan replied, steady enough to pass. When the door closed behind her, the house felt exposed, like it had learned how thin its walls were. The inspector arrived exactly at noon, county jacket, clipboard, polite smile. Routine, the man said, already scanning the porch railing. It took 40 minutes, loose screws on the back steps, a shed extension built years ago without updated paperwork, an outlet that needed replacing. Nothing dangerous, nothing accidental. Ethan signed where indicated. Follow-up notice will be mailed, the inspector said, already stepping away. At 12:45, Ethan's phone rang. His landlord. Given recent developments, the voice said smoothly, we're adjusting lease terms. How much? Ethan asked. A pause. 30%. Effective next month. That's not reasonable, Ethan said. It's market, the voice replied. Nothing personal. The line went dead. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, the chair across from him empty. He pictured Mia at school, unaware that numbers were quietly rearranging the ground beneath her feet. The second piece arrived through the school. Mia came home quieter than usual, backpack heavy with silence. How was your day? Ethan asked. Fine, she said. It wasn't. She pulled a folded note from her bag and slid it across the table. Concern has been raised regarding home stability. Please contact the office. Ethan read it twice. What happened? He asked. Mia shrugged. Mrs. Callahan asked if everything was okay at home. She said someone called. Did she say who? No, Mia replied. But she looked sorry. Ethan closed his eyes. That night, he made spaghetti and pretended it was just another weekday. Mia ate slowly, watching his face more than her plate. Dad? She asked finally. Yes? Is this because of the bar? Ethan didn't lie. Yes, Mia nodded. So, this is the test. He looked at her, surprised. What test? She shrugged. To see if you'll stop. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, but pride edged with dread. Yes, he said. That's exactly it. The third piece arrived disguised as understanding. An email from a contractor he'd worked with for years. Wish I could help, just can't risk it right now. You understand. Ethan did understand. That was the most exhausting part. By Friday, his savings told a story he didn't want to hear. Temporary work wouldn't be enough. Careful budgeting wouldn't outrun a rent hike like that. That night, after Mia went to bed, Ethan went out to the shed. He opened the old box and took out the boxing gloves. Cracked leather, familiar weight. He didn't put them on, he just held them. Control, balance, timing. You didn't win by swinging first. You won by staying upright longer than the pressure expected. He set the gloves back and closed the box. They met at a diner outside town. Neutral ground. Claire was already there, coffee untouched. He's squeezing, Ethan said as he slid into the booth. Yes, Claire replied. Because he wants you distracted. She placed a small flash drive on the table. Hank installed new cameras, she said, unofficially. Ethan raised an eyebrow. He's done being quiet, Claire added. What's on it? Ethan asked. The shove, the intimidation, the way the room froze. Ethan stared at the drive. What do you need from me? He asked. Claire didn't answer immediately. I need you to stay visible, she said. To keep living your life. Sending Mia to school. Letting the pressure show. That has a cost, Ethan said. Yes, Claire replied. But invisibility costs more. It just charges later. Ethan looked out the diner window at passing cars, ordinary lives moving past the test he was trapped inside. He wants me tired, he said, scared enough to choose quiet. Yes, Claire said. Ethan pushed the flash drive back toward her. I won't. Claire exhaled, relieved but serious. Then we keep going. She hesitated. If he crosses a certain line, I'll need you on record. Ethan nodded. When that happens, I'll be there. That night, Ethan's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This is your last warning. This time, he didn't delete it. He set the phone face down and turned off the light. Because the test was no longer about pressure, it was about endurance. And endurance always invited escalation. The gloves stayed in the box. Ethan Cole stood in the shed behind the house, morning air cool against his arms, staring at the cracked leather like it might speak first. He hadn't worn them in years. He kept them for memory, not muscle. Real strength isn't in throwing the first punch, his father's voice surfaced, steady as ever. It's in knowing when to hold it. Ethan closed the box. Holding it had never been the problem. The call from school came just after lunch. The counselor's voice was careful, every syllable padded. We've received inquiries, she said. Nothing urgent, just procedure. From whom? Ethan asked. A pause. We can't disclose that. Procedure, another clean word that left fingerprints everywhere. Is my daughter in trouble? Ethan asked. No, the counselor replied quickly. Mia is doing well? Then keep it that way, Ethan said. Calm, measured, and put everything in writing. When the call ended, his hands shook, not with fear, but with the effort it took to keep his voice level. He dialed Claire. "He's circling Mia," Ethan said. Silence on the line. Then, sharper focus. "That changes the clock." "It doesn't change my answer," Ethan replied, "but it changes how fast we move." They met in the community center parking lot, open, visible, unromantic. Claire arrived with a thicker folder than before. "I found something," she said, sliding into the passenger seat of Ethan's truck. 10 years ago, a youth program." Ethan's jaw tightened. "The gym, boxing, mentorship, you volunteered." "Twice a week," Ethan said. "Kids who needed somewhere to put their hands." Claire flipped to a highlighted page. "Funding was pulled, redirected to community branding." Ethan stared through the windshield. "Gavin shut it down." "Yes," Claire said, "because it built discipline." "Because it taught restraint," Ethan corrected. "That scares bullies," Claire nodded. "It also establishes intent. He removes anything that creates backbone." Ethan exhaled slowly. "He's consistent." The letter arrived 2 days later. Mandatory review, home environment, scheduled. Mia stood beside Ethan as he read it, her shoulders drawn tight. "Are they going to take me away?" she asked. Ethan knelt and took her hands. "No. What if they don't listen?" Ethan thought of the ring, how balance mattered more than force. "Then we make it impossible not to." That night, he called Claire. "I'm ready, on record." Claire didn't celebrate. She breathed. "Then we do this clean." The meeting room smelled like copier toner and stale coffee. A social worker, a school administrator, a notepad already half filled. They asked about finances, about supervision, about his temper. Ethan answered with facts, attendance records, grades, medical forms, letters from neighbors, photos of a clean home, a calendar that showed exactly where Mia was, every day. No speeches, no pleading. The social worker's pen slowed. "This doesn't match the report," the administrator said. "It never does," Ethan replied. There was no apology when it ended, but there was a pause. In Brookdale, pauses mattered. Outside, Mia squeezed his hand. "You didn't yell," she said. Ethan smiled faintly. "Didn't need to." They walked to the truck together. Across the street, a man leaned on a lamppost, pretending to scroll his phone. Ethan noticed. So did Claire, watching from her car. "That's new," she said. "He's measuring my restraint," Ethan replied. "And?" Claire asked. "And he'll keep measuring," Ethan said, "until he thinks I'll break." Claire studied his face. "He doesn't understand you." "He understands power," Ethan said. "He doesn't understand patience." That evening, Ethan returned to the shed. He opened the box again, not to wear the gloves, but to move them. He placed them on the workbench, palms open. Restraint wasn't weakness, it was weight, and weight carried long enough demanded intention. Inside the house, Mia called out, "Dad, I'm here," Ethan answered immediately. She padded into the kitchen, blanket around her shoulders. "Are you mad?" Ethan met her eyes. "I'm focused." She nodded, trusting the difference. "Will it stop?" she asked. Ethan considered the truth carefully. "Yes," he said, "but not quietly." Mia leaned into him. "Then we'll be loud when it matters." Ethan felt something settle, fear braided with resolve. He turned off the shed light and locked the door. Restraint had carried him this far, but restraint wasn't retreat. And as the night deepened, Ethan knew the next step wouldn't test his calm. It would test how far Gavin was willing to go once calm stopped working. The call came after dark. Ethan Cole was at the kitchen sink, rinsing a mug he hadn't finished drinking, when his phone vibrated against the counter. He didn't look at it right away. Urgency, he had learned, was part of the design. The vibration stopped, then started again. Mia sat on the couch behind him, half watching television, half listening for his footsteps. She'd begun doing that recently, measuring the house the way animals measured weather. Ethan dried his hands and answered. "Mr. Cole," a man's voice, professional and clipped. "This is Officer Reynolds. We've received a report that your daughter didn't arrive home after her after-school program." The mug slipped from Ethan's hand and shattered in the sink. Mia's after-school group ended at 6. By 6:25, she still wasn't home, something that had never happened before. "I'm on my way," Ethan said, already reaching for his keys. Ethan drove faster than he ever allowed himself to, the streetlights stretching into pale lines across the windshield. He didn't let his thoughts run ahead of him. He couldn't afford that. At the school parking lot, squad lights pulsed softly. Not a crisis response, not yet. Officer Reynolds met him near the entrance. She left with the group, he said, but a neighbor reported seeing her speaking with an adult male near the crosswalk. Ethan felt the ground tilt. Did they identify him? No, Reynolds replied. The call came from a private number. Ethan nodded once. Gavin didn't abduct children. He didn't need to. He only needed to let fear do the work. They found Mia 20 minutes later. She was sitting on the steps of the closed library, arms wrapped around her knees, posture too controlled for a child who had been scared. A patrol car idled nearby. Ethan crossed the distance in seconds and knelt in front of her. "I'm okay," she said quickly. "I'm okay." He checked her arms, her face, her breath. "What happened?" he asked, keeping his voice level by force alone. "A man stopped me," Mia said. "He said he was your friend." Ethan closed his eyes for half a heartbeat. "What did he say?" "He said you were in trouble," she continued. "That if I didn't wait with him, you might lose your job forever." Her voice stayed steady, but her hands trembled. "He knew my name," she added. "He knew my school." "Did he touch you?" Ethan asked. "No," she said. "He stood far enough away to say he didn't." Of course he had. Gavin always left space for denial. "I told him I needed to go home," Mia said. He smiled and said, "Of course." Then he walked away. She looked up at Ethan, eyes hard with a new understanding. "He wanted you to know he could find me." Ethan pulled her into his chest and held her there until the shaking came, and passed. Officer Reynolds cleared his throat. "We'll file a report," he said, "but without identification—" "I know," Ethan replied. They drove home in silence. Claire Donovan was waiting on the porch. She didn't ask questions. She saw Mia's face, Ethan's posture, and understood. "He crossed the line," Ethan said. Claire nodded once. "Yes." Mia went inside and curled onto the couch with a blanket. Ethan stood with Claire under the porch light, the night sharp against his skin. "This was deliberate," Claire said. "He wanted to provoke you." "He wanted me to lose control," Ethan replied, "so he could call me dangerous." "Yes," Claire said. "Or unstable. Either would work." Ethan stared down the street, imagining the man who had spoken to his daughter with borrowed authority. "I won't give him that," he said. Claire studied him. "Most people break here." "I know," Ethan replied. "That's why he did it." They stood there until the house behind them felt steady again. "I'm done waiting," Ethan said. "You need me on record." Claire's voice softened, but didn't waver. "Are you sure?" Ethan thought of Mia's voice, controlled, brave, trying not to scare him. "I'm sure," he said. The statement took hours. Claire recorded every detail: the bar, the shove, the inspection, the lease, the school call, and now the man at the crosswalk. Each piece placed carefully, like weight added to a scale. "This establishes a clear pattern," Claire said, "including intimidation involving a minor." Ethan nodded. "What happens next?" "We file," Claire replied, "and we make it public enough that it can't be buried." "That paints a target," Ethan said. "It already did," Claire replied. She wasn't wrong. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table until dawn, the house quiet around him. When the sky lightened, he went to the shed and opened the box one last time. He didn't put the gloves on. He took them out and placed them on the workbench, palms open, empty. They had taught him restraint. Now restraint would teach him timing. Inside, Mia stirred. "Dad?" she called. "I'm here," he answered immediately. She padded into the kitchen, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Are you mad?" Ethan knelt in front of her. "I'm focused," he said. She nodded, trusting that difference. "Will it stop?" she asked. Ethan answered honestly. "Yes, but not quietly." By noon, the statement was filed. By evening, a council member requested a meeting. By nightfall, Gavin Rourke's name was being spoken more carefully than before. Not with certainty, but with caution. The balance shifted again. Not because Ethan struck back, because Gavin had reached too far. And when bullies overreached, they revealed themselves. As Ethan locked the front door and checked the windows, he felt a new calm settle in. Not the calm of avoidance, but of alignment. The line had been crossed, not by him. And once crossed, it could not be uncrossed. This meeting appeared on the agenda without fanfare. No headline, no announcement, just a single line buried between zoning updates and budget revisions. Special session, community safety and conduct. Ethan Cole read it twice. Claire watched him from across the kitchen table. "They're testing the room," she said, "seeing who shows up." "And who doesn't," Ethan replied. Mia sat nearby with her homework open, pretending not to listen while catching every word. "Do you have to speak?" she asked. Ethan considered the truth. "I have to be there." The council chamber was smaller than Ethan expected. Low ceiling, fluorescent lights, folding chairs lined in careful rows. At the front, a long table with microphones waited like witnesses who had learned patience. People arrived in ones and twos, not a crowd, not yet. A retired teacher Ethan recognized from the grocery store, a contractor who once stopped returning his calls. Hank Miller from Marston's, standing near the back, arms crossed like he was bracing against weather. Claire took a seat 2 rows ahead, legal pad open, pen still. Ethan sat on the aisle. He didn't know if he would speak. He only knew he wouldn't leave. Councilwoman Barrett called the meeting to order, her voice steady but cautious. "This session addresses concerns regarding intimidation and public safety. We will hear statements from residents." Silence followed. The old gravity returned, heavy, familiar, tempting. Ethan felt it press down, the same force that had filled Marston's on the night he stood up. The room waited to see if it could stay quiet again. Then a woman stood. "My name is Ruth Caldwell," she said, hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the microphone. "I owned a duplex on Maple Street." Ethan leaned forward. "I sold it last year," Ruth continued. "Not because I wanted to, because inspections kept coming, complaints I couldn't trace, tenants leaving after visits." She swallowed. "I didn't know who was behind it. I just knew I couldn't fight it." The room shifted. Another person stood, then another. Stories emerged, small on their own, unmistakable together. Permits delayed, contracts withdrawn, anonymous calls that arrived politely and ended consequences. This wasn't outrage, it was pattern. Ethan felt Claire's gaze flick toward him. Not yet. Wait. The door opened late. Gavin Rourke entered as if he had been expected all along. Navy suit, confident stride, a smile calibrated for reassurance. He took a seat near the front without looking around. Some people stiffened, others looked away. Ethan watched him closely. Gavin did not look back. That told him everything. Councilwoman Barrett cleared her throat. "We will now hear from Mr. Ethan Cole." The name fell into the room like a dropped plate. Ethan hadn't volunteered, but the test had chosen him anyway. He stood. The walk to the microphone felt longer than it was, not because of fear, but because of weight. He placed his hands on the podium and waited for the murmurs to settle. "My name is Ethan Cole," he said. "I'm a construction foreman. I've lived in Brookdale 12 years. I'm a single father." He paused, not for drama, but to steady the room. "Last week, I stood up for a woman being harassed in a public place," he continued. "After that, I lost my contract. My rent increased. My daughter was approached by a stranger who knew her name." A ripple moved through the chamber. Ethan didn't look at Gavin. He didn't need to. "I'm not here to accuse without evidence," he said. "I'm here to describe what happens when power expects silence, and what it does when it doesn't get it." He spoke of the bar, the shove, the inspections, the school call, the man at the crosswalk. No anger, no embellishment, just facts. When he finished, the room stayed quiet, but it was a different quiet now, listening. Councilman Reed leaned forward. "Mr. Cole," he said, "do you have documentation?" Claire stood. "Yes," she said, "and so do others." She moved down the aisle, distributing folders, organized, indexed, undeniable. Hank Miller stood next. "My cameras recorded the incident at my bar," he said. "I kept the footage." He met Gavin's eyes for the first time. "I'm done pretending I didn't see it." Gavin rose slowly, buttoning his jacket. "This is outrageous," he said smoothly. "A coordinated attack fueled by personal grievances." The room didn't recoil, it evaluated. "That's not what this sounds like," Councilwoman Barrett said. Gavin smiled tightly. "With respect, I've invested heavily in this town. I would never—" "Then explain the pattern," Claire said calmly. Gavin turned toward her, irritation breaking through. "And who are you?" "A lawyer," she replied. "Who's been listening?" The air shifted. Councilwoman Barrett tapped on the microphone. "This council will open a formal inquiry," she said. "Effective immediately." Gavin's smile cracked. "This is a mistake," he said sharply. "You'll regret—" "Sit down, Mr. Rourke," Barrett replied. "This meeting is not about threats." For the first time, Gavin obeyed. Outside, dusk gathered as people filtered into the parking lot. Not celebratory. Changed. Hank clapped Ethan's shoulder. "About time," he said quietly. Ruth hugged Claire. Ethan stood with Mia near the truck, watching the sky deepen. "You didn't yell," Mia said. Ethan smiled. "Didn't need to." She squeezed his hand. "They listened." "Yes," he said. "They did." Claire joined them, exhaustion softening her posture. "This isn't over." Ethan nodded. "It never is." But as they drove home, Ethan felt something shift beneath his feet. Not victory, momentum, and momentum demanded direction. The inquiry did not move with speed. It moved with care. Claire had warned Ethan about this, the way institutions slowed down once they realized they were being watched. Not to protect the truth, but to protect themselves while deciding how much truth they could afford. Brookdale felt different in the days that followed the council meeting. Not safer, not calmer, alert. Conversations stopped when unfamiliar footsteps approached, then resumed anyway. People checked their phones before speaking, then spoke more plainly than they used to. Doors closed more quietly. Eyes lifted more often. Gavin Rourke did not vanish. He adapted. His office lights stayed on late. His name remained on sponsorship plaques and event programs. If anyone asked, he smiled and spoke of misunderstandings and cooperation. On the surface, nothing had changed. Underneath, everything had. Ethan felt the shift most clearly at work. He wasn't rehired, not yet, but he was no longer invisible. Contractors who had avoided his calls now returned them with careful politeness. One offered temporary hours and apologized for not offering more. "Just until things settle," the man said. Settling meant choosing a side. Ethan understood. He took what he could without pretending it was enough. The call from Claire came early Thursday morning. "They've issued subpoenas," she said. "Financials, permits, internal emails." Ethan leaned against the counter, watching Mia pack her lunch. "He won't like that." "No," Claire replied. "And that's the point." Mia looked up. "Is he in trouble?" Ethan considered the words. "He's being seen," he said. "That's worse for someone like him." Mia nodded, filing it away. The first public crack appeared quietly. A small article ran in the local paper. Page 3, careful language, no accusations in the headline. Town council opens inquiry into allegations of coercive practices. No names. But the body told a clearer story. By lunch, people whispered. By evening, the glass signage on Gavin's office door was gone for maintenance. Claire showed Ethan the article at a cafe near the courthouse. "He'll try to discredit," she said. "You, me, anyone who spoke." "How?" Ethan asked. "By framing it as personal," Claire replied. "Emotional, unstable." Ethan nodded. "Then he'll come for me." "Yes," Claire said. "Because you're ordinary?" Ethan met her gaze. "And that scares him." The attempt came that night. A police cruiser pulled into Ethan's driveway just after dinner. No lights, no urgency, just presence. Officer Reynolds stepped out, polite and guarded. "Mr. Cole," he said, "we received a report of a domestic disturbance." Mia froze at the kitchen table. Ethan felt something settle into place, cold, controlled. "There is no disturbance," he said evenly. "You're welcome to come in." Reynolds hesitated, then nodded. Inside, the house told the truth without speaking. Clean counters, homework open, dinner cooling on the stove. Reynolds asked careful questions, procedural, probing for cracks that weren't there. Ethan answered with facts. Mia answered clearly when addressed. Reynolds closed his notebook. "This doesn't match the report," he said quietly. "It never does," Ethan replied. When the cruiser left, Mia let out a breath she'd been holding. "That was him," she said. "Yes," Ethan said. "He wants us scared." "Yes," Mia lifted her chin. "Then we won't be." The mistake Gavin made came from habit. He tried to lean on a bank, a small nudge, requests framed as compliance reviews, accounts flagged for additional scrutiny. It would have worked on most people. It didn't work on paper. Claire called Ethan, voice tight with urgency. "He left fingerprints." "Where?" Ethan asked. "On a non-profit shell," Claire said. "The youth program you volunteered for." "The one he shut down." Ethan closed his eyes. "He buried it," he said. "He tried," Claire replied. "But he kept emails, transfers, language that reveals intent. They met outside the courthouse. Claire showed him a printed page, one sentence circled in red. Programs that teach defiance are bad for community order. That's not budgeting, Ethan said. No, Claire replied. That's motive. The hearing was scheduled quickly after that. Closed session, counsel present, no cameras. Ethan waited in the hall. He didn't need to be inside to know when the room turned. Claire emerged an hour later, her expression composed but unmistakable. They have enough, she said. For sanctions, for removal from boards, for referral. Ethan exhaled slowly. Is it over? For him, Claire said. Almost. For the town? Not yet. Word traveled faster than any headline. Gavin Rourke resigned from 2 committees. Effective immediately. A statement followed, vague, cooperative, hollow. Clients hesitated. Sponsors withdrew quietly. The mask didn't fall in a dramatic moment. It slipped. And once slipped, it couldn't be reset. Mia watched a short clip on Ethan's phone. He looks scared, she said. Ethan nodded. He's losing control. You didn't punch him, she added. Ethan smiled faintly. Didn't need to. Late that night, Ethan stepped outside. The street was quiet. No idling trucks, no watchers leaning on lampposts. For the first time in weeks, the darkness felt empty, not safe, but honest. He knew better than to mistake that for an ending. This wasn't closure. It was exposure. Gavin Rourke hadn't been undone by force, but by refusal, by a man who would not accept silence as the price of peace. Inside, Mia turned off the lights and called goodnight. Ethan locked the door and stood there a moment longer. Tomorrow would bring consequences, decisions, departures, and the shape of a town deciding who it wanted to be next. And when the dust settled, something new would have to take its place. 6 months later, Marston's Bar and Grill felt ordinary again. Not renovated, not renamed. The same scuffed floor, the same low hum of voices, the same jukebox that never quite got the volume right. But the center booth, the one that once carried a gravity it didn't deserve, was just a booth now. A family sat there laughing softly. 2 kids shared fries. No one watched them. No one claimed them. Ethan Cole noticed without needing to say anything. He came in early, ordered iced tea, and took his usual seat by the window. The glass sweated into the wood. Sunlight moved across the floor the way it always had. Ordinary had returned, and ordinary, he had learned, was precious. Hank Miller caught his eye from behind the bar and nodded once. No ceremony, no congratulations, just recognition. That was enough. Brookdale hadn't changed all at once. It had shifted, quietly, unevenly, the way places changed when they stopped pretending nothing was wrong. The council's inquiry ended without spectacle. No cameras, no shouting, just findings, sanctions, and removals delivered in careful language that left little room for misinterpretation. Gavin Rourke resigned from every committee he once chaired. Contracts dissolved not with scandal, but with distance. Investors didn't like attention. Clients didn't like patterns. Power didn't like daylight. Gavin moved away quietly. The town noticed, not because anyone announced it, but because absence made a sound when it followed too much noise. Ethan didn't become a hero. He became visible. Work returned in fragments at first. Short contracts, cautious offers, hands extended halfway. Then steadier work followed. Meetings felt different now. When Ethan spoke, people listened, not because he demanded it, because they remembered the cost of not listening. At the community center, a program restarted. No banners, no plaques, no donor names carved into walls. Just a ring taped onto the floor, borrowed gloves, and a sign written in marker. Open gym, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Ethan never called it boxing. He called it balance. Kids came who needed somewhere to put their hands and their anger. He taught them how to breathe when the room felt small, how to keep their feet under them when someone tried to knock them off center. Control isn't weakness, he told them. It's choice. They believed him. Mia changed too, not suddenly, not dramatically. She didn't become fearless. She became steadier. She spoke when something felt wrong. She raised her hand more often. Once, when a classmate was mocked, she stood up, not loudly, not angrily, just enough to make it stop. At home, she still asked questions, but they were different now. "Dad," she asked one night as they washed dishes, "do you think people are born brave?" Ethan considered it, rinsing a plate. No, he said. I think they practice. Mia nodded, satisfied. That answer stayed with her. Claire Donovan didn't stay in Brookdale. Her work carried her on, as it always had. But before she left, she opened a small office downtown. Shared space, neutral name, clear purpose. Legal advocacy, quiet representation. A door people could walk through without feeling exposed. On her last evening in town, she and Ethan sat on the tailgate of his truck, watching the light fade. You could have walked away, she said. After the bar, after the inspections, after your daughter. Ethan watched the sky change color. So could you. Claire smiled. True. They didn't talk about gratitude. They talked about process, about how systems bent slowly, about how silence struggled to return once broken, about how courage didn't need volume to carry weight. When she stood to leave, she extended her hand. Ethan shook it. Take care of the town, she said. It knows how now, he replied. On a cool evening in early fall, Ethan returned to Marston's. The booth was occupied by strangers. He took his seat by the window again, the same iced tea sweating into the wood. A man approached hesitantly. Someone Ethan recognized from a job site. You're Ethan, right? The man asked. Suis des. Ethan nodded. I just wanted to say, thanks, the man said, for standing when nobody else did. Ethan considered the words, then shook his head gently. I wasn't alone, he said. I was just first. The man nodded, understanding something he hadn't before, and walked away. Ethan finished his drink and stepped outside. The night air felt open, not perfect, but honest. Later at home, Ethan turned off the lights and checked the locks, a habit he kept now not from fear, but from care. Mia was already in bed reading. Dad? She asked softly. Yeah? If it happens again, if someone tries to push, will you do it again? Ethan sat on the edge of her bed. Yes, he said, but I hope you won't have to watch. Mia smiled, small and sure. I won't. I'll be standing too. Ethan felt the truth of that settle deep. He turned off the lamp and paused at the door. In the quiet that followed, he understood something fully for the first time. Justice didn't always arrive as punishment. Sometimes it arrived as permission. Permission to look up, to speak, to stop shrinking. Ethan Cole hadn't changed Brookdale by force. He'd changed it by refusing to look away. And once that refusal took root, it didn't need him anymore. It would carry itself forward, quietly, steadily, and without asking who owned the room.